You are tuning in to the Pop Culture Retrospective podcast.
This show is dedicated to the memory of my big sister Rebecca, a fan of all things pop culture, particularly of the people, places, and things that defined the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. Welcome aboard this pop culture time machine. I'm Amy Lewis. This is episode number 101, our 80s holiday wish lists, with repeat guest and, let's be honest, at this point, honorary co-host, Jason Lady. Enjoy. All right. Thank you so much for tuning into the Pop Culture Retrospective podcast. I hope everybody that's listening is in the holiday mood because we have a very exciting episode today. I am joined by a very welcome and appreciated guest to the show, a frequent co-host of the podcast, and that is the one and only Jason Lady. Welcome back to the show, Jason.
Thanks for having me back. I'm excited to talk about 80s nostalgia, Christmas, things that we had on our wish list, all those kinds of things. The research for this was a lot of fun, so very excited to dive in and talk about some of our memories for sure.
Yeah, it doesn't get much better than the 80s and Christmas. And I mean, we're all biased for our childhood years, but I think there was certainly something special about the things that you could get as a child during that period of time. And so Jason and I have kind of worked on our own to come up with a list of 5 different items from the 80s that we would be interested in receiving for Christmas presents or holiday presents. And we kind of based it around things that we would want as adults. So I certainly took that into consideration, and my list is sort of based off of things that toys and different items that I really liked as a kid or wanted, and then also things as an adult now and as a parent, things that I would be interested in having. And was that sort of your take on your list too, Jason?
Yes. If I had gone at it with things that I would have wanted as a kid, it would have just been all Star Wars stuff, and it probably wouldn't have been as interesting. So I went through it through the lens of, stuff that I would want now. If I could kind of go back in time and grab some stuff and bring it back to now, stuff I would legit have fun having as an adult now is the tack that I took with all of it. Because you don't want to hear me drone on about Star Wars toys for an hour. I think that's not the focus here.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I think mine would be a little bit narrow too. So it's kind of fun to look at it through an adult lens. And one thing I'll have to make sure to include in the show notes for this episode is Jason found a really great resource that allows you to view basically every catalog that Sears and JCPenney put out for, does it go back to like the 40s or something on this?
Back to the 40s. Incredible.
Yeah, this unbelievable website. I don't know who did this because they have scanned every single page of these 100-page. I mean, those things were humongous. They were so thick.
Big dictionaries. They're so thick.
Yeah, so I don't know how that person was able to do that, but it's, in really good quality to view. So I'll put that in the show notes. So if you want to kind of reminisce about holiday gifts that were available in the 80s, among other things, it's a great place to look. Lots of nostalgia and funny photos to look at.
Wonderful resource. If you were a kid like we were, where that catalog would come to your home and you would just sit there poring over it, even after the holidays were over, you'd want to keep it and still look at the pictures and kind of fantasize about all the stuff you didn't get for Christmas, and all the stuff you wanted. It's a walk down memory lane. And when I was trying to think of ideas for things, for my list, that's the first thing I thought of was those little catalogs. Those are going to spark some memories if I can find them. And it's probably like the second Google link that comes up when you Google Sears Christmas catalog 1980s or JCPenney Christmas catalog 1980s. Either one, boom, you get this list of all of them. Yeah, amazing.
That would actually be a really nice thing to have on like an airplane to sit and read. Honestly, for like, I got like a 3-hour flight to Chicago. I think I'm going to bust out that Sears Holiday Wish book from 1985. I mean, and I would then all of a sudden be like, oh, the plane landed, because looking through that stuff is fun.
So much time, would just fly by. And the other resource that was really good that I used was YouTube, like for so many things, because a lot of toy commercials, a lot of toy collectors who are a modern day, video, the person demoing the toy, actually in reality showing you all the features and walking you through it. That was also really useful for me
Yeah.
too.
Nice.
So another good resource if you want to know about 80s toys. The YouTube is a wide open landscape of all sorts of stuff. Pretty much anything you can think of.
Nice.
Yeah.
I know it's always comforting to know that there's other nostalgia nerds out there like us who literally themselves opening up He-Man from 1982 and telling us about Castle Grayskull. So that's awesome. I could be friends with those people.
Yeah,
They're
absolutely.
people.
Yeah, and even when I sent you the link for the catalogs, I was like, I wonder how Amy's going to take this. I bet she's going to take it pretty well. I bet she's going to think it's really cool. Is what I said. Sure enough, you were like, oh yeah, I love those catalogs. I'm like, sweet. It's a reason Amy and I are friends.
Yes, I know. Our shared love over old catalogs.
Yeah,
I remember I was like very obsessed with like kids' bedrooms in the 80s and 90s. So I loved looking at kids' rooms because I really wanted like a bunk bed. So I loved looking at what does this, room look like in this catalog? How much does it cost? Can we please get a bunk bed for my room? I looked at that stuff like crazy. And yeah, so those are some good memories, and many millions of trees died to print out those catalogs. That's probably good they don't do that anymore. But at the same time, man, that was
better for the environment, but scrolling through Amazon is not the same. Kids today are missing out, not to sound like a crotchety old man, but they are missing out of the wonder and the splendor, and just having your imagination just ignited by all these toys that seem so kind of out of reach. You weren't ever going to have them, but you're just pouring over like all the different toy lines that there were, even ones that did not go on to be very famous. You're still fascinated, like, oh, what's that all about, and wondering what that cartoon or that movie was all about. You never got to see it. You're just kind of glimpsing it. It was fascinating to me as a kid.
Yeah, agreed. And that's when department stores really were department stores. So there was a toy section and a sports section and a home section and a clothes section and a furniture section, electronics. And, even the ones that remain today are not as diverse, in terms of what they sell. So that's also another piece. Yeah. It's mostly those now. It's much different. So
the Targets, the Walmarts. I can't think of too many others that are out there, even at this point. Kohl's a little bit,
Yeah.
At least, in this part of the country where I'm at, Kohl's is a chain. But they are not as diverse. You're right. They don't sell as much different stuff under one roof like they used to. And I think it's because there's an alternate. There's the internet, right, where you can get everything. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Well, so on that note, so kind of like the other episodes that Jason's been on, we're going to kind of go back and forth, and our lists are not necessarily in order of preference or favorite item on the list per se. Mine are kind of in a random order. So Jason, I'll let you go first if you want to share what is your first item that you would like to have from the 80s for the holidays.
So I remember when I was a kid, toy swords were pretty cool. To have a toy sword of some kind, whether it was a lightsaber from Star Wars, whether it was a ninja sword from G.I. Joe, and something I think would be pretty cool to have as an adult. And I discovered this in one of those toy catalogs, the toy section of one of those catalogs, and then I watched a YouTube video about it. Is the He-Man Power Sword from 1989, which surprised me. 89. That seems a little late for He-Man. I'm surprised He-Man was still a thing in 1989. I wonder if it was one of those last gasp, hey, we're just trying to milk a few bucks out of the name.
I bet you're probably right. Yeah.
Before it completely goes away.
Yeah.
So it runs for $80 on eBay right now. So it costs $80, and that's a data point for each one of these items I'm going to talk about, is how much you can buy it for on eBay, or like the most expensive price on eBay. 22-inch long sword, so fairly definitely not to scale to He-Man's actual sword in the cartoon. They don't want kids breaking stuff in the house, so it's fairly short. He-Man was the toy franchise that fascinated my imagination, but I never was allowed to have it. Never had any He-Man toys at all. My dad thought that the figures looked like they weren't made well.
Mm.
and that they were out of proportion, like they were just
Yes.
too muscular. And
Yep.
so he was like, no. And I think part of it was a budget thing. Honestly, it's like you're going to focus on one thing, son. It's going to be
Right.
Star Wars, and
Right. Rein it in.
you,
Yep.
you pick one. You're not going to be able to do like 5 of these, and
Yeah.
because he knew how nuts I would go. And so that's why I picked out the He-Man sword, because He-Man always had a soft, a place in my heart. Never was quite obtainable. I
Yes.
love the cartoon. I would actually watch the cartoon. I would look at the toys in the store.
Yeah.
It has a gold-colored hilt, and this is really cool. It had buttons on the hilt to make noises, so you could do that dink dink like sword fight kind of noises, like you're fighting Skeletor and having a sword fight with Skeletor. But then also it made like the thunder sounds, when he would say, "I have the power," and like call down the lightning, and he would transform from the normal Prince Adam into the heroic He-Man. It would make those thunder noises too, which was pretty sweet. So I think I would like, of course, working from home, I wouldn't take it to the office, but I could use it during the workday when I'm working from home. If something especially cool happens, I accomplish something really great at work, I could be like, I have the power, and feel pretty cool doing it. So
how can you not?
That'd be a fun one to have around, even to have 2 of them, and when my nephews visit, I could sword fight with them. So,
and then maybe you could get one of those sword like things to hold up the swords on, like that you bolt to the wall to really make it look official, like a sword holder. Yeah.
Mount them on the wall. Yeah. We've all known those guys, right? There are people out there. There are those sword people, right? Who collect them. So that's my He-Man power sword on the wall. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I think sword people are also Renaissance fair people. I think they go hand in hand.
They collect them, and they've got like the replicas of Excalibur, and they know all about the swords from different areas of history. And you're right. Yeah. So to make it really official, I could put it over the mantle or something like that. I think
nice.
I think my wife might have a problem with that if I try to do it. But and just one other item of note about it is if there was an equivalent made for the She-Ra line, kind of the spinoff line for He-Man. I don't know. I didn't research that. I didn't really think about that till tonight. Is there a She-Ra version out there? So maybe one of the listeners can research that and let us know if there was such a thing.
Well, I was going to say, actually, is that we had the She-Ra sword.
Oh, so we did. Okay. There was one. Excellent.
Yes. I don't recall it making noise. I think it was pretty simple. I believe the sword part was white and the handle was pink, I want to say.
Okay.
So we were big She-Ra fans in my household.
Excellent.
And so somebody got that. I think it was probably my sister got that for a gift at some point. Or maybe, which seems odd because she's not really like a sword person. So maybe somebody gave it to me. But anyways, we had it and played with it and, thought she was pretty awesome and thought He-Man was pretty awesome too. And I know that, and I think, I want to say maybe like in 1981 or 1982, I believe He-Man was the top selling holiday toy. Yes. And the company who made him made his action figures that purposely made him like ridiculously buff, like bigger, build than other action figures to hopefully encourage, people to buy it. Mm-hmm. So He-Man was a big deal back then. So having a sword would be pretty awesome.
That's a good point, because the other 2 big toy lines at the time were Star Wars and probably G.I. Joe, and they were probably, He-Man was probably like 2 heads taller than them. Probably step on them and crush them. It was right. Literally bigger, and would outshine everything else on the shelf, and kind of overpower everything else visually. So that probably was the point. And you know what? My dad saw through it. He was like, nope, not falling for the marketing. Nope.
Right. Yeah. Don't want to send unrealistic expectations to my kids of what they should look like. Or
you'll never look like that without steroids yet.
Yeah, really. Yeah, totally. Oh God, that's too funny. All right. Well, anything else on He-Man?
No, that is it with the He-Man power sword, but it'd be pretty cool to have one now, that's for sure.
Yeah, that would be, man. This is good stuff here. So I'm already picturing just Christmases of yesteryear in my head. So this is good stuff. All right, so the first one on my list was the Speak and Spell, which was made by Texas Instruments. No, I had no idea. So for those of us who used the TI-83 calculator in high school that, we could put games on, and it cost like $200 to buy the calculator, they also made the Speak and Spell. So it was an educational toy. It was a kind of a red plastic about the size of maybe like a cutting board, I guess you could, like a small cutting board, I guess you could say. Um, yeah, and there's like a carrying handle, which is kind of a theme with some of the stuff that I picked out, which is pure coincidence. So it was red and had a black screen and kind of green computer lettering would come across the screen, and then there was a little press keyboard, and basically you could play games that taught you how to spell or pronounce words. It was first released in 1978 and had a bunch of different incarnations over the years. There were interchangeable game cartridges, and it was so popular that it was released in different countries and in different languages. It was actually one of the very first sort of handheld electronic devices. So this is way before Game Boy and Nintendo Switch and whatever people use now. So
Ahead of its time. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm pretty sure Speak and Spell is in ET at one point, I don't know if it's toward the end of the movie when ET's kind of in the woods. They've kind of connected it somehow to a satellite or something for him to communicate or something like that. I'm trying to remember. So it definitely made some appearances on TV and in movies and stuff like that.
Big
And
product placement moment, right? That
yes.
Reese's Pieces and other things on that movie. Yeah.
Yes. Which, God, I love Reese's Pieces.
Oh, me too. They're
I
so
can
good.
eat some of those right now.
They're better than M&Ms any day of the week to me.
Yeah, exactly. So that's something I feel like I could certainly see myself playing with. I can hear the voice in my head because, again, this is something that we had as children. And, these little things that were so simple, we actually learned quite a lot from. And there was, it's very simple, not very complicated, but it kept us occupied and learning. So, I think at the time it was pretty, a pretty awesome thing to have. And we enjoyed it for years, and it was very durable and very well made, which I think again is kind of a theme to some of the stuff that I have on my list too, is just the kind of a lot of stuff I think was made much better for the quality of these toys. I think for the most part was significantly better.
Could take a beating and keep on working. It'd probably still function 30 years later. Yeah.
Yep. So, so that's the Speak and Spell.
I don't think we had one. I think I knew kids that had them, and I definitely remember them. But I don't think that we had one at all. But how remarkable to have one of those in an era, like you said, where there weren't cell phones, there weren't tablets, there weren't even Game Boys, there was nothing. As far as like a wireless handheld device that could do anything really, other than maybe a TV remote control. And in the early 80s, not even those sometimes did you have available. You had to walk to the TV and change the channel and stuff. So incredible to have one of those. Now you said it made noise. Did it talk or anything like that? Did it say word?
Yeah, it did. So it would ask you to spell a word, and then it would, as you were pressing the letter, it would say it out loud. And I can hear that computer voice in my head still to this day. So just really, encourage literacy and spelling. And, not to toot my own horn, but I was a really good speller in elementary school.
Yeah.
Now, terrible. Elementary school.
I was terrible at math, but naturally good at English, excelled at English, so I was that kid too. Yeah. Yep. Excellent speller. And that I can definitely get behind as a children's book author. I can get behind a toy that helps kids, learn their words and learn how to read and learn how to, hear words and so forth. That's an excellent tool for sure. Very educational.
Yeah. And you could learn to spell and pronounce over 200 words.
Whoa.
On this device. So
very nice.
Yeah, pretty impressive for the time. I mean, 1978.
Wow.
Put this together, and very, very impressive. So so that's Speak and Spell.
Does Texas Instruments still exist? Do they still make stuff?
They do. There's actually a Texas Instruments I don't know, manufacturing facility in South Portland, Maine, which is about 30 minutes. And when you are driving around the Portland Jetport, you can see it. And kind of a friend of a friend works at Texas Instruments and met his wife also at Texas Instruments, and I think I made a bunch of bad calculator jokes, which I'm sure was the first time they'd ever heard
Nope.
a bad. I wish I could remember what it was, but I'm sure it was
They're
terrible.
just like cringing, like, oh,
No,
there goes Amy. Yeah.
you're right. Like, seriously, somebody makes a joke about Texas Instruments every day. Like, you can just stop right now.
That sounds like something I would do. And yeah, my wife would be rolling her eyes like, Jason, you have to. I'm sure they've heard that 100 times,
Right.
Like, I can't help it.
Right. It's like, did you type out "Will you marry me" on a TI-83, and then did you like pass it to her at the restaurant, or how did that all go down?
Did you make it sound it out, so she heard it,
Right.
that kind of thing.
Right.
Well, how funny they have a factory in Maine, because I got to tell you, my image of Texas Instruments, because since I heard of them for the first time when I was a really little kid, right,
Yeah.
is that it's a giant building in Texas in the desert, and there's people with cowboy hats everywhere. I've always envisioned it being that, which is so funny because the reality is so different.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that sounds more like the Lisa Frank offices, which are like in the middle of nowhere. I think like in Arizona, and it's like partially abandoned. Mm-hmm. So maybe you're confusing the Lisa Frank offices with Texas Instruments. Yeah.
There's no there's no brain logic to the thinking of adult Jason, let alone child Jason. Child Jason was even worse. So
same here. I trust me, I have the same thoughts. Yeah. All right. So what's next on your list?
All right. So anybody who's heard me talk on these podcasts before knows that I'm a fan of 1980s TV shows. And this is a toy from one of the greats from the 1980s, one of the great action TV shows, and that was Knight Rider. And I cheated a little bit with this one because I actually had this toy for a brief window of time. So this is the Knight Rider voice car from 1983. And so it is a replica of the car from the show, Kit, the black, souped up high-tech car, talking car from the show with the red, strobing light in the front. Now, what was interesting about this is that it came with a Michael Knight figure. David Hasselhoff played the character of Michael Knight on the show, the hero, and he was kind of the partner of the car. He and the car were kind of partners. He didn't really drive the car. The car could drive itself when he wanted it to, and they worked together to fight crime and solve mysteries and stuff. And so it actually came with a Michael Knight action figure, 6 inches tall. And what was interesting about this, as I thought about, like, why did I have this toy for such a brief period of time? What happened to it? Well, I have no idea what happened to it. I remember the apartment my family lived in when I owned this toy, and we were only there for 2 years. And I don't remember it in the next house. So somewhere between, it disappeared. And I don't know if another kid stole it. I don't know if my mom and dad got rid of it. I wonder if I actually didn't play with it that much. My mom and dad got rid of it. And I wonder, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with action figure height, because Michael Knight, being 6 inches tall, was probably a little more towards Barbie kind of size, and he wasn't the size of any of my Star Wars guys. And none of my Star Wars guys could sit in the car without looking like children, kind of peeking over the dashboard, And so he wasn't compatible. The car and the guy, Michael Knight, they weren't compatible with anything else I owned. So I wonder if I got it and kind of played with it for a while, then it just sat there, collecting dust, and it didn't come with there was no toy line. It was just this one thing, the car with the guy who came with the car, and there were no other vehicles. There were no bad guys. There was nothing, because there was like an evil version of Kit called Carr, Karr on the show. There was Goliath, that was a high-tech souped up like 4x4 truck that they had to fight at one point. They never made toys of those in this particular toy line. Yeah, it's not wild. They didn't capitalize as deep as you think that they would have. But and it's also interesting too that the David Hasselhoff, the Michael Knight, was so tall compared to my other figures, because I've watched reruns of Knight Rider. I forget what streaming service they're on, but I watched a few, and they're kind of fun to watch. From a nostalgic point of view, they're kind of cheesy, but they're kind of fun. And David Hasselhoff is a really tall dude. Like he is like freakishly tall, 7 feet tall or something. And you can see them struggling to fit him in the frame on the, with the camera with his co-stars. Like they're struggling to like make them like, okay, you stand on, they're clearly being like, you stand on an apple box,
Right.
And even then they're not looking him in the eye. So it's kind of ironic that he was probably like the tallest among all my action figures by far,
Yeah. Oh,
but,
man.
If I had him running around with my Star Wars figures, though, it's either that he was a giant or they were really tiny, and it was kind of like a Gulliver's Travels kind of situation happening there. So I could see why I didn't really play with it. Now, it was pretty cool. The doors opened. They had a little steering wheel on the inside that actually moved. There were stickers all over the inside of it that showed all the like electronics and stuff. What's interesting is that the red light on the front did not strobe. Actually, you could kind of move it in the light. And I watched a YouTube video where a guy was showing the toy and what it all the different features. And he was like, if you kind of hold up to the light and kind of move it, it kind of looks like the little light strobing. But I was like, lame. You could have put a light back there, guys, and not cheap out and made that actually strobe. But like I said earlier, it was the voice car. The car talked just like on the show. They did do that right. It is the actual voice. It is actually dialogue and, recordings taken directly from the show. It's the actor who did the voice. Yeah. And it had 6 phrases. You press the license plate and it would kind of cycle through all the different phases. The one in the YouTube video I watched, he had to press it several times to actually make it talk because this thing was so old and the motor was kind of breaking down. He said he was like someone more knowledgeable could probably open the toy up and fix it, And he was more just like, I'll just press it till it kind of revs up. It can actually talk normally, and it would talk kind of slow like this at first, and then eventually it would start talking at a normal speed. But the 6 phrases it would say would be, what is our next mission? I shall activate the turbo boost. Call me Kit, which Kit was the name of the car. Knight Industries 2000, for anybody who cares, was what that stood for. Scanning indicates danger ahead. Engaging the infrared tracking scope. Your reflexes are slow. Those were the 6 phrases that the car said. Which I thought was pretty cool, and I vaguely remember that, but I was like, I gotta watch the YouTube video because I don't remember what it actually said. I know it said stuff, but I don't remember what it said. And so I think I had this for a brief time, and it would be really cool to have that now because I think I would put it on my dresser or something. It would just be kind of cool to sit there and kind of like have, and I put my light inside it, and I don't have to worry about compatibility issues with anything else because I don't have a bunch of other toys, for him to fit in with. So. Yeah, the Knight Rider voice car from 1983, and actually it goes for $950 on eBay. I wish I'd kept this thing, Amy.
I'd have to find that somewhere and resell it. My God, that's amazing.
Yeah, find a cheap one where the people have no idea what they have.
Right.
So for $5 or something.
Right. God, I gotta go to some garage sales this weekend. Oh man.
Oh gosh, yes. Amazing. Yeah. So pretty cool. It'd be neat to have now, but it would mostly just probably sit there. But I would get a lot of enjoyment out of just looking at it for sure.
Yeah. Well, I wonder what kids are playing with this, car, and then it goes, your reflexes are slow. What?
That was odd.
How would a 5-year-old interpret that? Like, what?
Bad for their self-esteem, right? Yeah.
Right.
That's why my parents got rid of it. Like, you don't talk to our son that way.
His reflexes are just fine.
Yeah.
Nobody asked you, Kit.
Yeah. Yeah. No one asked you. This is bad for Jason's self-esteem, honey. We should get rid of it. Yeah.
I know. Let's roll that
discussion.
Right. Let's roll that little car right into oncoming traffic.
Right.
Yeah. And I got to see, I think his name is Bill Daniels, who did the voice of Kit. And he was also on Boy Meets World. And I saw him at 90s Con, which was really fascinating because he's, I think, in his mid to late 90s. So he did speak a little bit, and it was just really interesting to hear his voice, live and in person. It's kind of crazy. He has an interesting history with acting. So
kind of part of some iconic things like that.
Yeah.
In that regard, I think being a voice actor has to be a good gig because no one will recognize you on the street,
right.
At all. And I think you show up to a recording studio and you say your lines and you go home. You don't have to hang around on a set, for all night or anything like that. The Hoff probably had to do that. And,
right. Yep. Oh man. Oh, the Hoff. Don't hassle the Hoff.
Yeah. Don't hassle. Nope.
All right. Well, anything else on the Knight Rider?
No, that's it.
Out there. Okay. So my next one is something that I did not have, but really wanted, never got, and I'm still angry to this day at my parents. And I hope that they listen to the show and find one for me. No, just kidding. So my next one was the Ghostbusters Proton Pack, which one of my cousins had. I was very close with I have 3 younger, not by much, male cousins. And they didn't live that far away from us, so we saw them a lot and played with them all the time. And I was very much a tomboy, which I know is not people don't really use that term anymore, but they were just into all the stuff that I was into, and they played all the stuff that I wanted to play. I wanted to have nothing to do with Barbies and nail painting and all that stuff. I wanted to, play with action figures and play sports and stuff. So they always had really cool toys since there was 3 boys. And so so my cousin Carl had this Ghostbusters proton pack. So it is literally a kind of a backpack that you put on, and it has the whole container or whatever in the back, and then has a like blaster attached to it.
Ghost
And
trap.
then
Yeah, the ghost trap. Yeah.
Yep, that was on it too. And so then the little blaster was like a was connected to the pack, and then it had a really long yellow piece of foam on it, kind of like almost looked like a sword, so you could capture the ghosts. And then it had came with the trap. So it came with the pack, the blaster itself, an armband, an ID card, so everybody in your neighborhood could know that you were a Ghostbuster.
Sweet.
Yeah, and the PKE meter. And it was available in the mid to late 1980s. And I don't think I was like a really big. I didn't watch the Ghostbusters movies as a kid because I think they were probably too scary and I was too little.
Same.
Yeah, and my mom especially not into anything even really scary. And but there was a cartoon that kind of got like rebooted or something, like the new Ghostbusters or something, and I think that's when the proton pack came out, I want to say. Yeah, so and I remember my cousin brought it to like a family gathering, and we have a picture of my uncle with it on, and he's like blasting my grandpa. It's pretty funny. My grandpa, I think, looks like he's gonna fall to the ground.
That's great.
So yeah, so there's just a lot of really cool Ghostbusters stuff. I feel like I had their vehicle at one point.
Oh yeah, I have
So
a
even
Matchbox car of their vehicle actually on my
nice.
dresser right now. Yeah,
Yeah, I had a pretty big
one. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so the one I had was like pretty big. It was like the size of I don't know why I thought of this, but like it was the size of like one of those standalone VHS rewinder things. I don't know
Oh
why
yeah,
that was the analogy.
we had one. Yeah,
Yeah.
we had
So
one
it
of
was
those.
pretty decent size. Yeah. And it's just interesting that I just loved all those toys, even though I, knew very little about Ghostbusters, but whatever, the team there was designing stuff, it just was so cool and so much fun that I, wanted all of it. So, yeah, so the proton pack.
That's so
Pretty
cool.
awesome. Yeah.
That was going to be one of mine, actually. I considered it. I was like, ooh, I never had any Ghostbusters toys whatsoever. And later in life, I watched Ghostbusters and, really liked it. The first movie, at least. And I was like, saw that. I was like, oh, that'd be kind of fun to have, now.
Oh, totally. I would use it with my kids. And that's what a lot of the stuff that, a lot of stuff on my list, I just was based off of like, these are things I could, do with my kids or play with my kids. So they'd probably be fighting over the proton packs. I don't think there's a proton pack in our future, unfortunately. But they're super cool.
How about having that ID card again? Like imagine flashing that at somebody, when you're trying to get inside someplace and
yes,
it's official. Oh, okay, go in.
Right. Yeah. You need to, if you would like to buy this wine, you need to show me some ID. Like, well, hold on just a second. Let me get out my Ghostbusters ID. And then they'd be like, oh, you like Ghostbusters? Like from the 80s? Okay, you're old enough. Here you go.
Yeah. If you know who the Ghostbusters are, then yeah.
So you're all set. Same as showing your driver's license. You know what I mean? Same thing.
It has a practical use. See, if you had it now, it could help you out in your life. Yeah.
True.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
The 80s were a hotbed of movies geared for teens and adults, but weirdly getting a kid's toy line and cartoon.
Yes.
The Ghostbusters is probably
correct.
the most extreme example, right? It's probably the Ghostbusters. But then RoboCop had a cartoon.
Yeah.
Violent R-rated movie had a cartoon for kids.
Yes.
Another one was Rambo. Rambo had a cartoon.
Oh God.
And there were kids' toys. I remember a kid in my neighborhood who had like the Rambo like machine gun,
Right.
And it was just like these movies are so violent. There's no kids seeing these movies. Like, why are they making toys for kids? Yeah.
Right. Or the Terminator. Oh my God.
Oh yeah, they had Terminator toys for a while there, and it's like, who's watching Terminator 2 with their small children?
I tried watching the Terminator in the last like 2 years because I think I may have been like on in the background at like my grandparents' house. Maybe my dad was watching it with my grandpa, but I, wouldn't be watching it. That was so violent that we turned it off within the first 20 minutes. I couldn't take it. And even if the special effects were bad, still like the premise is so violent and like senseless violence. I'm like, I can't. I thought it was like going to be like so old that it seemed kind of silly that I could kind of
cheesy.
through it.
Yeah.
No, it was awful. So sorry to anybody who loves the Terminator, but I can't do it.
Terminator 2 is a little better in that regard. Arnold Schwarzenegger is the hero in it, and by that point in his career, he was not going to play a villain, and his movies got a little more sanitized by that point, a little more like open for more audiences. So it is less of a horror movie than the first one, more of just like a straight action movie. And the special effects really hold up considering it's CGI from like 1991. It actually still looks really good. But yeah, what an odd time. I don't quite get it. I wonder if it was a time of a lot of kids that were younger like you and I, looking at their older siblings and their parents being like, oh, I want to see that movie. I want to do the things you're doing. You know how kids do. They very naturally want to do the things the older people are doing. And so it's like, okay, well, to make you all shut up, here are some toys, here's some posters, here's some memorabilia, here, take that,
Right. That's so true. That is a really good point. And I think that's why I am probably more familiar with a lot of stuff that maybe I even shouldn't be, based on my age. Like, I feel like I can relate to a lot of like Gen X stuff because I had an older sibling, and a lot of my close friends as a child, they all had siblings that were, several years older than us. So I had a lot of exposure to, things that were popular in the 70s, things that were popular in the early 80s that I remember really well. And yeah, you're so right that any opportunity to turn something, no matter how appropriate or inappropriate, to turn that into some toy line. That is so true. That doesn't happen now. That's so right.
No.
I'm
Other
so
than
right
like
on that.
maybe Batman. The Batman movies are for kids, and there's gobs of Batman toys. Of course, there's Batman cartoons too. They never stop making those. There's always some kind of Batman cartoon. But that's really the one I can think of now. Everything else is they don't do that now.
Yeah. I know. It's such a special time, the 80s.
Oh, they really were.
Yeah. All right. Well, what's next for you?
All right. So my next one is from another toy line that I did not collect, and actually not one I was never really interested in it. And that's the Transformers. Too fussy. I don't like toys where it's like you got to like unfold the thing and make the thing bend and like and then it turns into the thing. No interest in that at all.
Yeah.
I want it to be what it is, and that's how I was when I was a kid. So I never really got into Transformers, but there is one Transformer that would be pretty cool to own, just to have them again sitting on my dresser, sitting on my desk, and from 1984. His name is Soundwave. He goes for $500 on eBay right now. So yeah, I know, right? And I'm talking about the first edition of Soundwave, the very first one they put out. He's really boxy looking, kind of primitive looking, kind of old school, kind of cool. He's a bad guy. He's from the evil Decepticons, who were the evil Transformers. The Autobots were the good guys. He's a Decepticon. Yep. He is the guy who turns into a cassette tape player.
Oh, I see. Yes, I know what you're talking about. Yes, I've seen that. Oh my God, that is
so cool.
So the layers of why that's so awesome is just like ridiculous.
The fact they even made it, right? It's like, what are you thinking, The others are all like trucks and cars and airplanes and helicopters and motorcycles. Like, and then we have the cassette player. The bike can't even move on its own,
Right. Oh my God. Was there a Laserdisc edition? That's crazy.
It came along later. Yeah, you think a little later they'd upgrade them, right?
Yeah.
In fact, I think they did. I think I read they did have a CD version of it later. Yeah, because the tapes, were out of vogue at the end of the 80s. You had to move to the CD era.
Yeah.
But Soundwave was a robot that could turn into a cassette player. On him, all the various Walkman controls, as you would think of them. Add volume control, had an on-off, fast forward, rewind, play, record, stop. All the buttons were there. Couldn't actually play music though. Couldn't actually do that. Wasn't sophisticated enough to do that. I think later ones they put out could, but that first one there was no way. They're not going to pack all those electronics in there at that primitive stage. But the coolest thing about him is that he did have a cassette deck that would open. It was on his chest and it would open, and a smaller robot that could turn into a cassette hid inside of there. And so when it opened up, it would fly out, turn into a robot bird, and attack the good guys.
Oh my God.
I know, right?
That part of it I don't remember, but the cassette tape. Yeah. That is unbelievable.
That has another little robot in it that turns into a cassette, which I just think is amazing and
that is
awesome.
That person, whoever designed that is a genius. and
Oh,
deserves like the Nobel Prize or something. That is incredible.
insane genius, right?
Right. Oh
Um,
my gosh.
Little Mini Cassette was its own character, of course, named Buzzsaw, and they actually made 14 different little robots that you could buy in packs, I think of 2 or 4, maybe something like that. And
Mm.
they too could fold up into little cassette shapes and fit inside sound waves. So there were actually a bunch of those that kids could obtain over time. There could be a little army of them over time. I thought that was just insane. And obviously, the toy makers, they know what they're doing. Like, we'll make a little extra money here by
Right.
having more of these cassette tape robots, that could hide inside Soundwave. Yeah,
I'm gonna get you cassette tape if it's the last thing I do.
right. Can you imagine? Yeah, what
Yeah.
a bad day for the good guys to get beat up by them. Like the tank, fine, the fighter jet, fine. We took care of them. The cassette tape, though, no, run, retreat. Yeah, we can't handle that. So
Yeah. Pull out a pencil.
they're
Then you'll
playing
see what.
Barry Manilow, run. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
Let's do the
I kid.
Carpenters. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Oh my
I like
God.
I do like Barry. But the actual Soundwave, when he was in robot form, he did have a cannon on his shoulder that had like little plastic missiles in it that you could pretend to like shoot.
Hmm.
So that was kind of cool. But yeah, alas, he could not actually play music, at least not that very first one. But it would be kind of cool to have him. And I think if I got bored and I had maybe 5 minutes between meetings or something, I would like put him into his robot form, and then maybe a little later in the day put him back in his cassette tape form. And
Oh my God.
that can be kind of fun during the workday when I'm working at home.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was one of them. And I was not a Transformers kid, like I said, but as I was looking through those catalogs and thinking, I was like, oh, that would be kind of sweet to have.
Yeah. Oh man. And
I
what a
know.
missed opportunity to not have the theme song playing. That
Wow.
theme song is so good.
So good. More than meets the eye. Robots
Yes.
in disguise. Yeah, they didn't do it. Yeah, you're right. I didn't think about
Hmm.
that. Oh, total missed opportunity. It would have driven parents out of their mind
Oh
because they're
yeah.
doing that all day long. They're
Yeah.
like, take that toy outside. Yeah.
Right.
Or into the basement, shut the door. But
Right.
there's been a lot of that happening. But yeah, you're right. They could have done some marketing. They could have
Yeah.
further brainwashed these kids, to want more Transformers toys.
Right. I mean, that's definitely a song that it's one of those things where, once a month, it's like randomly stuck in my head all day. It's really, really
Mhm.
catchy. And I'm sure they're kicking themselves for not putting that,
Yeah.
that fantastic theme song on the toy. That's missed opportunity. Big time.
Building that in. Yeah, right up there
Yeah.
with the GI Joe song.
Yeah.
GI Joe, Real American Hero. That.
Yeah.
Yeah, right up there with that. In terms of the great cartoon theme. So yeah, miss opportunity on your part. Hasbro, I think Hasbro made them. Yeah.
Yeah. May have been. Yeah. Oh man. Good
So
stuff. Good
so
stuff.
yeah, over to you though.
Okay. So my next one is the pogo ball, which was something that I kind of like you had for a short period of time, and I don't know what happened to it. But it was actually invented by toy designers from Belgium in 1969 and was manufactured by Hasbro in the 80s and 90s. And essentially, was a rubber ball surrounded by a plastic platform. Kind of reminded me of like Saturn, sort of the planet Saturn, and you use it kind of like a pogo stick, and it helps with balance and agility, and probably increasing the likelihood of breaking your ankle. But I had one, and I loved that thing because anything outdoor playground sports related, I was there. So I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, that I was a flower girl for some, I don't even know, some cousin of somebody, I don't know, something.
There's always random cousin weddings when you're a kid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
It's like, how did I end up being a flower girl for like something I barely know that like doesn't happen now? But anyways,
You were the only kid available. Is really how that happens.
right? Like, oh, you're kind of young enough, sort of.
Yeah.
And yeah, I probably won't see you again, but thanks for being a flower girl. But yeah. But anyways, as a result of doing that, and I guess doing a good job or whatever, not that I ever really got in trouble as a kid, but I was the recipient of a pogo ball, and I was really happy about that. And I'm sure I bounced on that thing on our driveway with my, LA Gear high tops a lot. And I'm assuming I must have like popped it or something. And then my parents just didn't replace it because they probably thought I was going to like crack my head open or break my ankle.
Yeah.
But it was, a lot of fun and just encouraged movement and, all that good stuff that kids need. And it's something that I think it's actually still made. I don't think it's may not be made by Hasbro.
Okay.
But I believe it's still being made. And that's something I could totally see my kids playing with, especially my youngest son, who's actually wanted a pogo stick for a very long time, but he would end up in the ER. This might be a good alternative, actually.
Yeah, you don't fall as far when you fall off one of those, a pogo ball.
Right.
As you would from a
Yep.
pogo stick. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so they had some great commercials for them, and it was just again, another thing that just very simple, nothing fancy, not very expensive, but just genius and so much fun. And it was very short lived because I don't think I even have any pictures of me like playing on it or anything like that. So must have popped it. So when I had it, it was a lot of fun.
Some things are just a toy you had for a short time, right?
Mm-hmm.
They only lasted for a season, and then they were gone with the wind,
Yep.
and you have no idea where they went.
Yep.
I remember those. I remember a couple kids in my neighborhood having them. I have to admit, I was terrified of them. I was not a kid that liked roller skating, ice skating, skateboarding, anything where like my feet weren't on the ground. I'm still like that actually. Just naturally, I like the feeling of terra firma under my feet, and so I was never even tempted to even use a pogo ball. So to me, you're like Evil Knievel or a Daredevil because you so kudos. Yeah, I remember watching kids use it and be like, oh no, never. Hey, Jason, you want to try this out? No, keep it away from me. So, but they look like fun, and who knew it was a Belgian creation? Who knew?
Yeah. I mean, thank God it got, it made its way over this way. We're better for it,
Yeah. Belgians have given a lot of great things to this world. French fries and chocolate, good chocolate, lace. They make fine lace over there, as well as the pogo ball. So who knew?
Yeah, I know. Maybe there's like a pogo ball museum or something over there that I should visit.
Yeah, they probably do, like a Hall of Fame or something.
Yes.
From throughout the ages.
Right. They should have like a Hall of Fame for like toys most likely to break your ankle, and that would be in it. The Razor scooters would be in it. Skip-Its.
Oh yeah, rollerblades.
Yeah, rollerblades. Yeah.
I don't remember Skip-Its. What were those?
Skip-Its, oh man, that could have easily been on the list too. So Skip-Its were again, kind of another like playground sort of toy. So it was plastic. There was a ring that you could fit around your ankle, and then on that ring was a long stick, and at the end of the stick there was kind of like a ball or wheel, something that could roll on the ground. So you would like rotate your kind of kick out your leg, and the skip it would like make a circle, then you'd have to jump over it with your other foot that didn't have the skip it attached. So you're kind of like moving both of your legs and getting exercise. And there was a counter on it, so you could see how many times you twisted the skip it around and jumped over. I mean, again, simple.
Yeah.
I think if some kid was playing with it on, a driveway now, I think it'd probably create car accidents because people will be like, what in the God's name is on that child's foot? It's like so random.
Be rubbernecking, yeah, and then crashing into the telephone pole. Yeah.
Right. Kind of like, giving you a chance to sort of like experience maybe what it would be like to have like a portable double dutch, where you have to like keep moving your feet and jumping.
Okay.
I think it's, kind of tied to like jump rope in a way of just like having to time things. Cause if you didn't time your, if you put it around your dominant foot, so it'd be like around my right foot, if you didn't time, your left foot going over that plastic stick, then, I guess you could probably trip. I'm sure many children did. But it was pretty popular. Another very memorable commercial jingle for that too. But yeah, Skip-Its are pretty cool. I'm sure
look those up. Yeah, I don't remember those at all. So
I can sing the jingle in my head. I mean, yeah, it's these playgrounds.
Yeah, doesn't leave you, right? Yeah, all these areas of our brain that could be devoted to something that might be more useful, and it's taken up by so many other things. But they bring us joy.
Right.
That's we're talking about these things. So
right.
That's important.
Right. I can't do my own taxes,
Yes.
but if you would like to know the jingle to skip it, just let me know.
Funny story about that. So on Facebook, I saw a guy post a picture of not even a full action figure. It was the torso of an action figure. And he was like, just for fun, can anybody identify, what action figure this used to be before it lost all its limbs and its head? And I knew what it was. And he was like, oh, great job. I identified. I'm like, it's actually very sad because that same day I called a coworker by the wrong name.
Oh no.
So I can identify a action figure by its torso alone, but I don't know who I actually work with. Like, am I an adult? I don't know if I really am.
Oh my God. It's I so can relate to that.
Misspent life,
Right. It's like, oh, did you remember to pick up my medication? No. But what I did do was the entire choreography to Bye 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 in the living room. So there's that. And sorry, medication, I forgot about that. But I didn't forget some dance moves from high school. So
priorities. Come on.
Right.
It's
important.
That's great. I love it.
Oh man.
Oh,
all right. I think you're next, right?
I think I'm next. Yeah, you did the pogo ball. All right. So this is from another 80s TV series, another icon of 80s TV and of the 80s in general, not even just television. This is Mr. T. And this is the Mr. T doll, Mr. T talking doll.
Ooh, I know. I have a feeling I know what he said, but go ahead. But keep going.
Probably at least one of the things, right? Yeah. It's the foregone conclusion. 12 inches tall. So pretty tall toy. He was a good, Barbie or Ken size for sure, maybe even taller. $450 in the box on eBay. If he's mint condition in the box, $450 for this. Amazing. Wow. Made by Galoob, if you remember Galoob, the toy company Galoob.
Yeah.
Made from 1980 all the way to 1989, I read. This was out for a long time.
That's surprising. Yeah.
It is. You think that, the first kids would like it and then be done with it, and the next kids coming up wouldn't care about it, especially after the A-Team went off the air. But no, it kept going for a while there. Very authentic looking, has the mohawk, has the beard, has all the gold chains and all the jewelry, the 5 million pounds of jewelry he wore, bracelets. And of course, we know Mr. T from the A-Team, like I said, but also Rocky 3, another great 80s movie, fighting Sylvester Stallone in that movie. Cartoon, Mr. T and the T-Force, that was on for a little while there, for a hot minute. And he was the star of a lot of PSAs. He did a lot of like public service announcements, visiting schools and stuff like that. So it's very interesting. So the Mr. T figure, you might wonder, did he come with any accessories? So he did. He came with a toolbox filled with tools. I thought that was really interesting. Didn't come with a gun. Didn't come with a hammer, like any kind of melee weapon. Just
that's good.
And I wonder if that was because his role on the A-Team show was the mechanic. Like he was the guy who would like soup up the vehicles and keep everything working and stuff. So I wonder if that's why. And he had kind of maybe a little bit of a nonviolence, ironically, but a nonviolence bent to some of the stuff he was promoting in public, kids do the right thing and stuff. So I wonder if that was what it was. Now they did have a couple other ones, him in different outfits. There was a fireman, Mr. T, fire rescue, Mr. T.
I don't believe it. I'm not okay with that.
I'm gonna send you a photo. I will send you a photo.
Okay, that is unacceptable. He should be in his camo pants and cut off denim jacket or whatever that was.
Yes, and the
unacceptable.
The one that I'm focusing on, did dress like that. Does have that, the boots and everything. There was also a soldier, Mr. T, wearing camo and a helmet.
That makes a little more sense. Yeah, I'll accept that.
It does. He came with a bazooka that shot suction cups.
Oh my God.
That's great. That's awesome.
The more guns the better in the 80s, you know what I mean? Like, oh my God. And didn't even bat an eye. Which,
just the way it is. And all the characters on the A-Team, like the 4 main characters, they're all Vietnam veterans. So I wonder if it's meant to represent, that character back then. I don't know. But there's a fireman, Mr. T, and there's a soldier, Mr. T. No police officer, Mr. T, but there is a firefighter and soldier. So
sounds like a member of. Sounds like he's the missing member of the Village People, apparently.
I didn't think about that. Good point. There needs to be an Indian chief. There needs to be
Right.
What was that one? A sailor needs to be a
Yep.
sailor. Yes. If you buy all 5, you have the village people.
That's right. Yes. Oh man.
There are jokes about the GI Joe figures. Actually, that you put certain ones together, they completely represent the village people. You can 1-to-1 representation of
Yep.
all the village people. You can actually draw from the GI Joe toys. So Mr. T had had a string on the back that you could pull, and as the string went in, like with so many other similar toys, he would say phrases, and he only had 4 phrases, unlike the Knight Rider car that I was talking about had 6. Mr. T only had 4. So he says, "Study hard in school," which is pretty cool sentiment to get out there, I think. He also says, "Always listen to your parents." So also cool, you know.
Yeah. Relevant.
He says, and this is very much from the A-Team show, he says, "Murdoch, you crazy." Murdoch was the crazy guy, played by Dwight Schultz, and he was the helicopter pilot, and he was like Howlin' Mad Murdoch was his nickname, Howlin' Mad, and he was just a little off, a little crazy.
Probably PTSD.
Yeah, actually, looking back on it, I'm like, oh, this guy's a little uncomfortable. Yeah, he had some problems. He had issues that needed help with. But he was always doing crazy stunts in the helicopter and stuff, and Mr. T didn't like flying, on the show, so he was always terrified by Murdoch's craziness. So it's pretty cool they slipped that in there, Murdoch, you crazy. But then, of course, and you called it, Amy, he says, "I pity the fool."
I know it.
He has to say that, right?
Right.
He has to.
People would have returned it if they pulled it and that phrase didn't come out. People would have been like, "This is garbage."
Right. Yeah. I'm not even gonna get it. Yeah, I'll be testing it in the store before I buy it. Does it say it? Does it say it? Okay, it's at it. Cool.
Right. Yeah.
I'm gonna buy it. I'm sad he didn't say, "I'm gonna bust your head." He didn't say that, and he didn't say, "Quit your jibber jabber." He didn't say that either. Those were some of his other classic phrases too.
God.
I was expecting it. I was watching on because again, you read about the toy existed and kind of its, even the catalog description of it, it doesn't tell you actually what it says. It doesn't lay it out for you. The mystery is there. You have to buy it to find out,
That's
so
true.
watching the YouTube videos and watching, some toy collector on there posting a video and being like, here's the stuff this Mr. T doll said, and kind of showing you all the different things about it. And I just had to watch that video to find out what it said because I couldn't find it anywhere else. So, but pretty cool. Pretty cool. You might be wondering, okay, Jason, as an adult, what would you do with this thing? I again, standing on my desk, standing on my dresser, my wife would probably set fire to it after a while. Like, I don't want to look at that thing anymore. Get it out of my house. But it'd be kind of cool to own. Kind of fun.
Yeah. It'd be fun to I don't know, I was thinking going to the library or something, or like a college campus and having it say study hard or whatever that phrase was. It might be kind of fun to prank some
study hard in school. Yeah. Or if one of your kids is doing their homework and in their bedroom, you can have them peek into the door, through the crack and pull the string and go study hard in school and then run away. They're like, "Mom, stop it! You're creeping me out." Yeah.
They would. Oh my God! First of all, I would totally do that. Second of all, they would be irritated. So yes, that is accurate. Yeah, and man, Mr. T was such a icon of the 80s, and my second-handed claim to fame is my dad was a bouncer in the 70s in Chicago, and Mr. T was also a bouncer. So I think they.
No way.
Yeah, both. Whatever took care of business. Sketchy people in the 70s.
Took care of fools in the 70s. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
How interesting. Your dad was a bouncer? That's so cool.
Yeah, my dad's I don't even know, 3rd, 4th, 5th, I don't know, something degree black belt, and studied karate for a long time, took it very seriously and was a karate instructor. So he was all about Mr. T big time. So
who knew? I had no idea.
Yeah.
Wow, incredible.
Yeah, it's photos or something. I don't know. But yeah,
don't mess with him. Holy cow! So did they work at the same club? Did they have to double team people?
Yeah, I think they ran into each other. And perhaps ended up at the same spot sometimes. But yeah.
Cool. Yeah. And people today can't really fathom the cultural phenomenon that was Mr. T in the 80s. He was everywhere.
Yes.
Posters, stickers, toys, TV, cartoons, all over the place. It's just wild to look back on that, but he was pretty cool, and kind of a role model figure. Some of the things he was trying to get across. Kids study hard, stay in school, make straight A's. I remember that was a big thing.
Hmm.
Big A's in everything. I think is like the three big A's, like academics, athletics. There was something else, good citizenship, something that started with an A. But yeah, he had this whole like thing where he was trying to be positive for kids.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of cool. But yeah, and still alive today. He's still with us. He doesn't look that much different.
No, he doesn't. He's aged well for sure.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. I remember when I don't know if it was like a Halloween episode or something of Different Strokes, and Arnold came out and was dressed as like Mr. T, and was adorable because God, Gary Coleman was so adorable.
Yes, he was.
And there was also a Mr. T cereal.
Yes.
And I remember there was some show on VH1, I want to say, or something back when VH1 was halfway decent, and so was MTV. And it was called like My Super Big Obsession or something. And there was some young guy who was like obsessed with Mr. T. And he had an original Mr. T cereal box, like sealed from the 80s. And I think the show was on maybe like in the early 2000s or something like that.
Whoa.
And somebody convinced him to open up the Mr. T cereal and eat it, and it was disgusting. So
I got it.
I was like, I can't believe this is happening. He is opening the Mr. T cereal. He is eating the cereal. He looks nauseous. So
yuck. Yeah. I've heard of people doing similar things of like C-3PO cereal from the 1980s. Let's see what it's like now. Does it still hold up? Does it still taste good? It's like, well, what do you think? It's like 35 years later.
Right. So gross. Oh my God. I could never, ever do that. That's disgusting.
I mean, think about like the sheer amount of non-natural ingredients that are in that, like what it probably morphed into over time. Like, yeah, you shudder thinking about it.
Right. Don't want to look at that in a petri dish. Look at that under a microscope. Yeah, no.
Yuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really think you've made it in American culture if there is a breakfast cereal with you on it. If that's happened, then yeah, you're good. So
yes.
Frankenberry, Mr. T, C-3PO, sundry others. Yeah, you've made it when you're on a cereal box.
Yeah, agreed. That is yes. And again, that's another just notorious. It's something that the 80s were notorious for, is making cereal from random TV shows or yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm trying to think of some examples, but I'm sure like pretty much every cartoon we've talked about, that probably at least briefly was like a Transformers cereal, a He-Man cereal,
Yeah.
I don't know if they market stuff in that same way anymore. I don't know if that happens now.
I don't think so. Because I don't think it's as much of a whole, toys used to be in cereal boxes and stuff, and that doesn't really happen anymore either. So yeah, I think that's definitely shifted. That's a really good point. I don't think it's used for marketing purposes as much as it used to be. So.
Synergy between getting up and watching cartoons on Saturday morning.
Right.
Kids don't need to do that now. They can watch cartoons anytime now, right?
Right.
But back then it was, and you had your cereal. So I think there was like a marketing synergy thing where it's like, okay, well, they're going to pull out their G.I. Joe cereal, and they're going to eat their G.I. Joe cereal while they watch the cartoon,
Right.
And, they knew what they were doing. I mean, they tied everything together for sure.
It's true. Yeah. I did a show about sitcoms from the 80s and 90s. And one show that I was talking about was Family Matters, which I wasn't like a huge fan of that show, but some of the backstory stuff is pretty interesting. And the character of Urkel actually had his own cereal, like not on the show, but like in real life, called Urkelos, which I do not remember at all.
No.
But apparently at one point, probably like in 1990, you could get Urkelo cereal.
Who knew? I had no idea.
Yeah. I mean, like a nosy neighbor cereal. I mean, what?
Yeah, who wants that? Is that really appealing? Was anybody asking for this? Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I remember strawberry shortcake cereal. That was a thing.
Yeah.
And Pac-Man cereal. And I think that's a natural because you have all little ghosts. It could be marshmallows and stuff.
Yeah.
That's a natural. But yeah, Urkel cereal. Who wanted this? Jeez.
Yeah. It's like, were the cereal pieces shaped like suspenders or aviator glasses? I don't understand. Like, what do you do with that?
Yeah.
How
What
does that
do
work?
you do with that?
Like Pac-Man, that makes sense. Urkelos, no, it doesn't make sense at all. But
yeah, what makes it Urkel cereal, quote unquote? Yeah, I don't.
Right.
I don't buy it. Yeah, very,
Right.
very ill-conceived. Yeah, what were they thinking?
Exactly. I know whoever decided to try that out, I'm sure got fired from General Mills or whatever company put that out. So
Probably, yeah. They're
yeah,
like, you failed us for the last time. The Urkel
right,
cereal's the last straw. Get out of here. Clear out your desk and get out. Yeah,
right. And take all your cereal with you because
yeah.
it's not selling; it's being pulled from the shelves.
So it's
So
all
there you go.
yours. We're gonna ship it all to your house. You have to deal
Right,
with it now. Yeah,
right.
big pallet of it arrives. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's your turn.
Yes, it is. Um, okay, so I think we're getting close to the top of our list here. So my number two is again something that I had, and I would so use this and have it now, and use it with my kids too. And it is the Fisher Price tape player, which was made from 1981 to 1987. And it was battery operated, required 4C batteries to operate. So of course it was, really heavy because not only the batteries, but it was like really, really heavy duty plastic and was
Yep.
specifically designed to kind of stand up to what, being dropped and stuff like that accidentally by kids.
Mhm.
There was a built-in microphone and like a couple other things, it had a built-in carrying handle, which was genius.
Mhm.
So kids could easily, put their little hands that covered in peanut butter and jelly all over their tape player. And there's, of course, buttons to play cassette tapes, and they were oversized and easy to see, which again was perfect for a toddler. And I remember there was a big, stop eject button. And the cassette player came with a yellow cassette tape, and there were sounds on one side, and then the other side was blank, so that little kids could record themselves. Because, like I said, there was that built-in microphone.
Love
So
it.
I think, yeah. And so my sister, I think, got it as a gift at one point, and for a long time, and I bet my mom still has it somewhere. But her little voice, is recorded on the cassette tape, and she's singing "Girls Just Want to Have Fun" that by Cyndi
Oh,
Lauper.
cool.
Yeah, which my sister, I guess, had only heard like once, maybe in the car. Like my parents were not Cyndi Lauper fans,
Hmm.
but somehow my sister was just really smart. I mean, they knew that right away, and she like was able to recite the lyrics to that song, and she was probably like, I don't know, 2 or 3, and she maybe heard it like randomly on the radio or something driving. So, but anyway, so it's just really neat. Toy, and what little kid doesn't love hearing the sound of themselves talking about whatever nonsense toddlers talk about. But we had that thing forever, and it was mostly beige, which was very kid friendly color, and all the buttons were dark brown, very earth toned, if you will.
Mhm.
And we just love that thing, and I'm sure dropped it, and it's fell off of dressers and whatever, and still lasted. I mean, that thing was built like a tank.
Yeah. Mhm.
I'm trying to think, like having a really hard time coming up with like how to describe the size or proportions of toys this evening, but yeah, it was just a fantastic thing to have, and allowed us to play, of course, other cassette tapes as the years went on, like Culture Club and Tina Turner and all that good stuff. So that was
Yeah.
a really, brilliant.
Janet Jackson. Yeah.
Yes, another brilliant toy by the geniuses at
Mhm.
Fisher Price. I mean, that was a great, great toy. So
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah,
That's so cool. I can't remember if my sister or I had one of those. I'll have to ask my sister if we ever had one. I remember getting my first tape player, and it was a double cassette tape player, like a really kind of a small but like black, but like a boombox kind of thing. And I got it
yeah,
in late elementary school, and my sister had one, I think
hmm
before I did because she was older, and it was silver, but hers was also a double.
yeah,
Tape deck too, with of course both of them had radios in them too and stuff. That's the earliest ones I remember. I can't remember if we had like the Fisher Price version you're talking about, for
yeah,
younger kids to have, that's more durable and you could easily carry it around with you and all that stuff. Yeah, kind of a
yeah,
boombox for kids, right?
yeah,
That's what it
yeah.
sounds like.
Basically, yeah. It's probably like
Yeah, you can walk around with it on your shoulder.
chameleon. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yep.
So yeah,
Oh, that.
love
That's
that thing. And
interesting.
yeah,
Well, very
it's
supportive
iconic.
of the recording your own voice, because
Yes.
mine didn't, but my sister's tape deck had the built-in microphone, and we could, and my dad would buy us blank tapes, so we could record stuff off the radio and things like that, and
Yeah.
so, or tape some of his music to our music, and have our own copies. So
Yeah.
taking his, but we would record our own voices. I don't remember what we used to do, but we were just goofballs, and we would play it back and just be laughing hysterically.
Yeah.
Looking
That's
back,
the
I'm like,
best.
how wonderful, but what goofballs we were.
Yeah.
Just goofy hours
Yep.
of entertainment just doing that.
So true. That's so true. That was like me and my sister with our answering machine message. That same thing when we'd do stupid stuff and then just start laughing hysterically and then have to change it because that wasn't going to work, or easily amused. I
Yes.
think we are a very easily amused generation, and I will never take that for granted. So
Yeah, when you see kind of how hard it is to be entertained after a while, right? Things get too complicated and too
right.
sophisticated, and
Yep.
require too many things to function. You got to have the Wi-Fi, you got to have this, you got to have that, and the thing has to be charged up. Now it's like, back then it was just so simple,
Right.
so
Yeah.
very
Didn't take much.
simple. Yeah, that's kind of cool. They made this like gateway tape player for small children. They could kind
Yes.
of start out with that and work their way up as they got older. I think that's a great concept.
Yeah, I do too. And I've talked a lot on the show about how much and I know this applies to you too, is how much a role my parents played in my music interests, as a child, and stuff that I still listen to this day. And I'm very grateful that they got us stuff like that so that we could listen to music. And I'm sure I stole their tapes and didn't give them back, not on purpose, but just because it happened. So having that was amazing. And I can always remember listening. We were always listening to music as kids, and it's a fond memory for sure.
And there was definitely a transition point where you were okay listening to music with your siblings or with your parents, and after a while, it's like, I want to listen to my music in my room, And then it was like, that was a demarcation point where it's like, I'm going to go be alone. I'm going to brood, as a middle schooler or a teenager. I'm going to have my own music playing. I would borrow my dad's Pink Floyd and just be listening to Comfortably Numb over and over again. No one understands me,
Right.
on repeat in my room. And I'm sure after a while he's like, I'd like to have my tape back.
Right.
Give me my tape back.
I really don't wear it out. You're gonna make the.
Well, it was funny. I did my Walkman at one point ate one of my dad's tapes. I remember coming home being like, "Oh no, I have to tell him that I ate his Dire Straits tape." And it wasn't even an original tape; it was a copy of a vinyl. Because he had all the vinyls and he'd copy them to audio cassettes so he could play them in the car. And he wasn't even upset. He's like, "Oh, I'll just record another one," but no big deal. I was like, "Oh, good," because my dad loved Dire Straits.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, well, like huge. It's like out of all the tapes that you could have destroyed, that was
had to be that one.
Yeah.
Right. Of course it was.
Yeah.
So luckily he still had the record, so he could just re-record it.
Crisis averted.
Crisis averted. Yeah. But how cool! What cool memories with for your you and your sister, and cool you had the recording of her voice, or her child voice. How awesome! You think about this in this day and age, that kind of thing can be taken for granted. We have umpteen million digital photos. We could do audio recordings of our phone, videos. But back then it was a lot harder, as right, to do those things, and you had to have special equipment to do it. That wasn't everyday equipment. It's so amazing that a kid's toy let you capture voice and keep it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was like magical. I mean, it sounds really corny, but it's true. It's because, like you said, it's rare. It was a rare thing, and
yeah, for sure.
Fisher-Price is pretty awesome.
Oh yeah, great company.
Yeah. All right, what you got next on your list?
All right, so I think this is the last of my 5. I have 2 honorable mentions, but this is the last of my big 5. All right, so I have distinct memories as a kid, looking through those Sears catalogs, looking at those JCPenney catalogs, and being fascinated by all the remote-controlled robots. There were a whole bunch of remote-controlled robots, a ton of them, different sizes, different configurations. There's like one that's kind of the apex robot. And I did some research on like which one was like the best one. So this one apparently was the best one, also the most expensive one. This is called the Omnibot 2000. The Omnibot 2000. There was just a plain old Omnibot with no qualifier on the end, just Omnibot. And made by a Japanese company, a Japanese electronics company called Tomy, Tomy, made in 1984. This was so a long time ago. this robot was a little over 2 feet tall. And like I said, this was kind of the ultimate one. So it cost $600 back then in 1984. $600. Nowadays, that would be $1,816. I did that math in one of those little inflation, converters, and I was just like, my word, it'd be over $1,000 now if they sold it now. So for comparison, a toy that I considered putting on my list, and I ended up not doing it at all, is the G.I. Joe aircraft carrier, which was over 7 feet long. LeBron James could lay down next to it, and it would be longer than LeBron James.
Oh my God.
This thing was massive. It retailed for only $109 back then. Omnibot 2000 retailed for $600. So that tells you anything about the differences here. Now, when you hear about all the things Omnibot can do, you're going to be like, okay, that makes sense. It did a lot more stuff than the aircraft carrier could do. So what's interesting about it, so it would roll along on the ground. It had a remote control with a little antenna and all the stuff and a bunch of buttons. And you could make it, probably the most simple thing you can do with this, make it just move around your house, make it roll to and fro, left and right, back and forth. It had to be modified when they started selling it in North America. The reason why, shag carpet. It couldn't, the Japanese version could not get onto shag carpet.
Oh my God.
Interesting side note, we tried out having a Roomba for a little while, a little robot vacuum cleaner, just kind of vacuum the house.
Wanted one of those, yeah.
We tried it out. So I will confess, we have a couple carpets in our house that kind of are shag adjacent. We'll just put it that way.
Yes.
And the Roomba would not go up onto the carpet. This made me think about that. Like, the Roomba could not do it, and we had to get rid of it because, this thing can't vacuum our carpet. This thing's worthless, And so Omnibot had to be modified so it could actually get up onto American and Canadian shag carpet.
That is hilarious. Oh my God.
It's so great, so funny. It had a little drawer in the back to put the remote in, which I thought was clever. Remotes always get lost, so you could actually store it inside the robot. It had a rechargeable battery that you could put inside of it. I forget what kind of battery it was, if it was D batteries or whatever, but it did come as a rechargeable thing, so you could actually charge the actual battery and then put the battery in him. The battery would probably take a long time to wear out. Yeah. And then the remote control let you do a lot of different things. So you can make the eyes light up. It had 2 big kind of yellow eyes. And I should actually take a step back and describe what it looked like. So it had kind of a white body. You want to think of like Wall-E. You think of the cartoon Wall-E.
Yeah.
Or the one Muppet movie had a robot called the 80s Robot that was kind of helping Kermit in the group. It looked like that. It actually looked a lot like that. I think they based that on the Omnibot. So kind of a white body, kind of a black face, but with like big eyes, 2 big giant eyes, and a head that could swivel and stuff. But the eyes would light up yellow. With the remote control, though, you can make it turn its head, so the head can turn left and right. Like I said, you can make it roll around. You can make it rotate in place, so it could kind of like pivot, like actually where it was standing, and actually just change direction pretty easily. Had a walkie-talkie function, so you could actually send the robot into another room using the remote control, and then talk into the remote control and make the robot talk at someone else. I would have loved that as a kid. I would actually love that now.
Oh God, me too.
That'd be so much fun.
Oh, I would have had a field day with that. Yes.
Just have it sneak up on somebody and be like, "Hey,
right.
that stupid robot,
right,
get it out of here."
Yeah.
It had a chest panel that actually had a built-in radio tuner. A digital clock actually was displayed on it. You could have it play the radio. You could have it play audio cassettes. It had an audio cassette deck built in. So the more I talk, the more you're probably seeing the dollar signs go up. It's like, okay, I can see why it said a big $600 retail.
Yeah.
Interesting feature it had was when you played music, the eyes would strobe to the beat of the music that you play. Pretty sweet. I watched a YouTube video where a guy was demonstrating all the features of the Omnibot 2000, and he pointed that out. I was like, oh, that's really cool. It really does do that. Yeah. So here's something that kind of set it apart from a lot of the other similar robots, and that was it could serve drinks. It came with a tray.
What?
It actually,
my God.
Now you kind of wonder why, but then it's also with so many things in life, why not? Right? Why not try this?
So you could yell at people through this thing, listen to music, and oh my God, and drinks. I mean,
I know it did it all. Play the radio, play music, play audio cassettes. It did, That's why I picked this one out of all the other robots, because I'm like, it really did everything. So it had a little tray that kind of hooked on the front. It had 2 little arms, and the arms kind of had very simple like hands, like grippers on the ends of the hands. And the remote control, you could like control the hands, control the wrists, and you could actually make it pick up drinks, like pick up a can of Coke and have it pour the can of Coke into a glass. Now you had to set up everything ahead of time for it. It couldn't go to the kitchen, open the fridge, pull stuff out for you. You almost had to like set it up, or someone had to do it for you, and then you could summon the robot back to you and have it, pour drinks for you. So the guy was demonstrating like pouring the drink. It's a lot of button pushing to make it do it, because it's like very simple, movements have to be done in a certain order for it to like get the hand over to the beverage, pick the beverage up, put the beverage in vicinity of the drinking vessel, twist their wrist, and pour. And he was like, yeah, by the time you do all this, you might as well just pour it yourself.
That's what I was going to say. It's like probably took 20 minutes to have the robot pour it when it would have taken like 20 seconds.
So it's one of those things that probably sounds okay in practice. When you do it yourself, you probably do it once, and it's like that very dead because there's a pain in the butt,
Right. Or I spilled the Coke all over the robot. And now it's broken. Yeah.
Yeah, the guy who made the video said, the magic of editing, you're not seeing all the mistakes I made trying to pour stuff and missing the glass and stuff. I made a huge mess. It was really funny. And yeah, like I said, a couple pop culture robots, that are clearly based on it, drawing upon the nostalgia of the Omnibot. People might remember Wall-E, and the 80s robot from the Muppet movie is based on that. But yeah, I always thought these things were so cool, as a Star Wars fan, there's R2-D2, Luke Skywalker's little robot friend, you always were like, oh, it'd be kind of cool to have something. I could have a little robot guy following me around and helping me, with my day-to-day tasks. And so this gave you at least the fantasy, the illusion that, oh, I could maybe do that. So I remember being a kid looking at those catalogs and like, oh, that'd be cool to have one of those robots that could help me with stuff during the day. I don't know what I was thinking it would do, but I think I would have been disappointed when I actually got it after a few hours. Oh, it can actually help me with my homework. Darn,
Right.
I can't clean my room for me. I was probably thinking it could do those things, but it seemed like a cool thing. So yeah, it's kind of like where fantasy and toys kind of like the line got blurred between them for me, I think. But it was delightful to go down memory lane, look at the catalog, see what robots actually existed, and then actually do some little research and see, okay, how do these actually work? What did they actually do? It was a lot of fun. So yeah, Omnibot 2000 from what year was this from? Did I say? Early 80s. Yeah, 1984. This is from. Great year.
Yeah, I feel like robots were a big thing in the 80s, like in movies and Short Circuit, and like you said with Star Wars. I feel like every child was fascinated by robots, and there was robots in TV shows, like like you mentioned too, and Pee-wee's Playhouse, and
Space Camp, the movie, had a robot.
Yep. Yeah, Screech had a robot in Saved by the Bell. And I certainly remember going through phases where I really wanted a robot, or I thought I could build a robot.
Yeah.
Or I wanted to build a robot out of my remote controlled car and like add some stuff on top and do something with it, which I have like no mechanical skills at all, and would probably just broken everything. And but I certainly went through like a phase where like, yeah, I can definitely build a robot that can like sweep and cook.
Yeah, I think we all did. I had that phase where it was like, oh, I could totally build one of these myself, and you at least imagined you could do it. But yeah, in reality, this reminds me of how we have a KitchenAid mixer, and it started having an issue, and I watched a YouTube video about how you could fix it yourself, and it was a lot of taking it apart, a lot of screws or unscrewing. And I was watching being like, it would never get back together again, right? It would never get back together again, right? I know myself, and this would not work. And neither one of us are mechanically inclined. So it was like, no way. So I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. As an adult, you can talk yourself right out of it. As a kid, it's like, oh yeah, I can build a robot. I can, hitchhike across the United States. Nope. No, I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah, my bed will turn into a spaceship and I'll fly out the window, whatever it is,
Right.
You don't know your limits. You don't really know the limits of the world. You don't know your own personal limits yet,
Right. I know. It'd be kind of fun to be able to go back to that for a day, and just not worry,
Be just carefree. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I agree. All right. What's your ultimate one, Amy?
All right. So my ultimate one is kind of, similar to the previous one. And again, like out of all the things I could have, I think this one is definitely a big time nostalgia for me. Reminds me of my childhood, reminds me a lot of, everything is very much, tied to my sister. So I think the one piece of nostalgia that I would love to have as an adult would be our Fisher Price record player, which I think was actually called the Fisher Price phonograph, but it was a record player. Again, the color scheme was brown, orange, and yellow, very similar to the cassette player, the tape player.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This was made from 1979 to 1989. It could play 33s and 45s because there was a built-in adapter. So all you'd have to do is twist this little wheel. I mean, it's a genius design.
Yeah.
But very durable. So you just like twist this little gear to fill the center part of the 45. So you could play anything on it, which was great. It had 4-inch speakers. It was very portable. I'm sure it was kind of heavy, but it had a built-in carrying case.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so like the lid was beige and snapped onto the record player, and you could take it to another room. And that thing was always on. I think we got even more use out of that than the tape player because we had a pretty decent selection of records as kids. So we had the Cabbage Patch Kids record that we listened to all the time, Rainbow Bright. I actually found, I think both of those albums, I think I found as an adult and have bought because I have a record player here in my office. So,
cool.
Yeah. And then I think on one show, one of the episodes we did together, we were talking about like one-hit wonders from the 80s, and I mentioned Johnny Kemp, who sang Just Got Paid. And we had the 45 of that that we listened to all the time. Yeah, I think it was like a single or whatever.
Sweet.
Yeah, and that's the same record player that I'm sure I've mentioned before, that I was jumping on my sister's bed and landed on this record player and I ended up with like a really bad black eye.
Yes.
And it still worked. I mean, and that I remember because that accident happened in our old house, and we still had that record player when we moved to our new house, and it worked perfectly fine. So again, just a testament to Fisher Price making these really good toys. I mean, not only could it handle like being dropped, but having a child land on it face first with like some force from jumping was pretty impressive. So that's another thing that my kids are kind of intrigued by records, and they like to listen to music and hear about stuff from my childhood. And I talk to them about my sister multiple times a day. Thankfully they never tell me to stop because I'm always referencing something with her. So I think that they would love this thing, and it would be nice to have something that they couldn't really break, because the layer that I have up here is kind of a little finicky, and it's just not built to the same actually not even close, actually built to the same quality as like the Fisher Price toys.
Not meant to stand up to kid play. Yeah.
No, it's not built as well. So that just really, I mean, it obviously looks the color scheme is very dated and the design very dated and very simple, but that's like such a symbol of my childhood, growing up, and the adventures that I had with my sister and falling off of her bed and all that fun stuff. So as an adult, I would totally use it. And as a kid, totally used it. And I think there is something very special about listening to stuff on a record. It just has, I don't know what it is. The sound quality is not as good as an MP3 or whatever. But man, I love the sound of records, and we loved that record player so much. So I don't know where that ended up, but those are on eBay too. Both of the Fisher Price things, especially, I've seen on eBay. I'm trying to recall the price, but I don't think it was anything as crazy as what you had. But I think a lot of them were like maybe like $100, $200. So still must be market for. I'm sure there's like crazy 40 somethings that are trying to find that to outfit. So
I remember it from when they were kids, and want to have one back. probably by virtue of them being durable, probably has made it so there's more operational ones in existence. And so the
That's
price
true.
is not as high, right? Like some of these other things I've described, they probably got so messed up and played with and probably weren't as durable, right?
Yeah.
Fisher Price made good stuff. They engineered really good products, so I wonder
Maybe.
if there's just simply more of them out there, that
Maybe, yeah.
that work, and that's made the prices kind of stay a little more reasonable than some of the things I mentioned. You
Yeah.
know,
Yep.
I love all the memories you have attached to that. I think that's so cool. It makes me think about, my dad had the kind of stereo cabinet, had a spot in the bottom for the records to be lined up, and of course there was an overflow on a bookshelf of more records. It couldn't all fit. It
Yeah.
just in the one thing, but had like kind of the main ones there, and then it was double tape deck, and then receiver, and then
Mhm.
record player at the very top, because its lid had to be able to flip up. And I
Of
just remember
course.
being fascinated as a kid just watching that record spin
Yes.
inside there. And I still remember my dad teaching me how to carefully put the needle on the record. And if you want to skip a song, here's how you do it. You have to be
Yeah.
really careful when you do this. And it was just really special. And you're right, there is something to that. Like, oh, we got to flip the record over now. There's something kind of cool about that. It's almost a little too streamlined now in some ways, where it's like I could listen to like thousands of songs in a row. It'll never stop.
Right.
And back then it's like you had to make an effort to actually, okay, side one is over. Let's flip to side two and see what's on the next side of the record.
Yeah.
No, very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool stuff. Good memories for sure.
Yeah. Well, hearing you say that too. Yeah. I think us being able to grow up seeing our parents' physical
Yeah.
media, really had an impact on us. I can remember what color cassette tapes were, what was on the cover of it. I can remember what was on the cover of a record album, all that stuff I remember from stuff
Yeah.
that my parents had or that we had. And, kids it's not gonna be the same as like, oh, I remember pressing the screen on mommy's phone and listening to Taylor Swift,
Right. With a
which
little
there's
tiny
nothing wrong with
icon
that.
to tell you what
Yeah,
the album art looked like. Yeah.
right. Which, that they don't know any different, but it's just a different experience. And I,
Sure.
I have so many, memories tied to music and,
Yeah.
yeah.
Pouring over the album covers. Yeah, I remember my mom and dad would have out their Beatles albums. I remember just being fascinated by the covers. There's one where they're all, it's a balcony, but like it's looking up and they're looking down off the balcony at you. I remember, and like
Hmm.
one side of it, they're the young Beatles. The other side of it, they're the old Beatles with the beards. The older
Yeah.
Beatles, the psychedelic Beatles with the
Yeah.
beards. The more hippie Beatles. And I remember
Yeah.
just being fascinated by that. The Sgt. Pepper's cover that
Mhm.
has all the different pop culture of the time.
Yes.
Huge
That's
with all these.
iconic. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember just poring over that as a kid. Didn't know who most of them were, but I just thought it was so cool to look at. And
Yeah.
some of that album art has just stuck with me over the years. The albums that my mom and dad listened to for sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good memories for sure. And I love that the record player was portable. The kids could actually take it from place to place. You could take it to
Yes.
a friend's house. You could take it to your sibling's room. All that stuff. You could. It wasn't just stuck in one place like a regular
Yes.
record player is.
Right.
You can't
Yeah.
really
Just
move
lived
that
in
around.
your living room behind that glass
Yeah.
cabinet door, yeah, because we would take it to the basement and play it down there, or take it to somebody's room.
Hmm.
Just genius. I mean, just
Yeah.
I feel like I should write Fisher Price a thank you letter or something because they,
Hmm.
were such an integral part of my childhood.
Yeah. Intersection of playing with your sister and your parents, music collection and getting into music and playing your own music. Like it's just a lot of things intersecting together that a lot of other toys don't
Yeah.
have, right? They maybe just have a couple of vectors like that, whereas the tape player sound like they just have a ton of different things going on,
Right. Yeah.
for you. Yeah, how cool. That's
Yeah.
really
And
neat.
very boring color schemes.
I found that interesting
Yeah.
because when you picture a toy from the 80s, and we were talking about this before we hit record, like people think stuff from the 80s was all these neon colors and stuff. And it's like, no, it was all brown. It was all wood paneled. We had the whole podcast we did about wood paneled
Yes.
stuff. It was all wood. Everything was wood back then.
Mhm.
you know,
Right. Baby
um,
boomers loved their earth tones and they made sure that their children's toys were that too.
we're
So,
the same, right? So
mhm,
that way your stuff looks like your parents' stuff. Yeah.
right. Blends right in. Blends
Cool.
right in.
It does.
Um, all right. So we both have some honorable mentions. Do you want to share what your two are?
Yeah, so my first honorable mention is it's actually a Star Wars toy. I've been talking about Star Wars as my favorite toy line, my Apex toy line when I was a kid, my focus. Had most of the Star Wars toys. So this was a prototype that actually was never released. It was a Boba Fett, who's the bounty hunter character introduced in The Empire Strikes Back. Very cool looking armor and everything. Doesn't say much in the movie. They made a version where he had a rocket on his back that would actually shoot out. You'd hit a switch and the rocket would shoot out. As you can imagine, the toy companies kind of took a step back and said, this seems a little unsafe. A kid might shoot it into their eye. They might choke on the missile. So they retooled the figure so the rocket doesn't come out at all. I had that figure, the one with the rocket doesn't come out. There's always this legend of, it's out there. If you could only find it, the rocket shooting one. Well, it never actually was released. It turns out in the internet age, you actually do learn the truth behind the legends of these things. And so, but it was never released. But if you were an employee of the Kenner Company, there were a certain number of prototypes made. They ended up in the hands of employees, kind of made their way out the door, surreptitiously. And I got to imagine someone's cousin, uncle, great uncle, grandpa, they have this stashed away somewhere. Most of them are unaccounted for. They're out there somewhere. So that's one of my honorable mentions. It'd be kind of cool to have it. And because if you do have one, it can go for $500,000. $500,000.
Oh my God. Well, I guess Star Wars stuff is just
it's out of this world right now. Crazy.
Pun intended.
Yeah. Very funny. And so it was so rare and never released, so that obviously drove the price into the into outer space, into another world. So that's one of my honorable mentions. Do you want to do one of yours and then we'll do one of mine, or do you want me just to do both of mine?
Yeah, I can do one of mine.
Please.
There's certainly hard to kind of narrow that one down too. But I think one thing that kind of came to mind that I of course really wanted as a kid, didn't get, and something that actually my kids have talked about wanting but haven't gotten, and they're really too big for it, are Power Wheels. So that's like, little motorized vehicle. Usually they resemble cars that are made today, or the ones back then, of course, had older vehicles. So they had a lot that looked like Jeeps, and I was always obsessed with Jeeps as a kid, and even now as an adult. So I always wanted like a go-kart or something motorized to ride around on. And actually I think that would be really hilarious to be able to do that somehow with my kids. I mean, we wouldn't fit in there. But maybe they could make it a little bit bigger. But I think just having something that's, doesn't go very fast, that's motorized, is just like fun for everybody, which is why I still to this day love golf carts. I've always been into like, stuff like that. And that was another thing, like, oh yeah, I can build a go-kart or like a little motorized, car that I can like sit in and drive around the neighborhood. Totally,
Sure. Absolutely.
FYI, I don't even know how to change my own oil. So, meanwhile, back at the ranch, can't change my oil. Don't know what's wrong with the car. Check engine lights on.
Need help with my windshield wipers when they're wearing out. Yeah, someone else has to do it.
Yeah, don't know how to do anything. But as a 7-year-old, I was quite certain that I was going to be able to build, build that. So, so I think my oldest son has been very fixated on wanting a Power Wheels, and I keep trying to explain to him that those are meant for like 5 and under. So
you're a little older for that. Yeah,
so need to build a bigger Power Wheels. So
like wait a few years and you'll be able to get a driver's license and drive the real thing. You don't have to drive that yet.
You don't have to drive that Barbie Jeep that's going to go 3 miles an hour.
Right. Yeah. You won't even be thinking about it anymore. Yeah. But I agree. Those were really cool. There was always a couple kids in our neighborhood who had, some version of that when I was little. And I was just like, oh, that's so awesome. I wish I had one. Never had one of my own. I did have a big wheel, when I was a really little kid, with the giant wheel in the front. Mine was Chip Steam from the TV show Chips. Nice. It had a police siren that my parents really quickly took away when I got it for Christmas because it was really loud. They didn't want to hear it, so it went away.
Wow.
But, never had the electric car though. Never had that. So that would have been pretty sweet. That would have been really cool.
Yeah. We had a big wheel too. Do you remember Poochie?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I ran across Poochie in my looking through those catalogs. I ran across Poochie stuff. Yeah.
Yep. We had a Poochie, which that is like such an obscure
it's a really obscure toy line. Yeah.
Niche big wheel, but that would go for a lot. Because there's some crazy people out there that really want their Poochie themed big wheel.
And there probably aren't that many of them now. There probably aren't like hundreds of them sitting around. Yeah.
They're all like in the landfill because they're like made like made very cheaply.
There's someone out there with a Poochie themed room in their house. You know there is. There's someone
so
out
true.
there. And I'm not casting stones at that. I am not. Because,
right. Hey, teach their own. If you want a Poochie tattoo that takes up your whole back, you know what? You do you. I'm not here to judge.
It's not somewhere people will see during a job interview. So, more power to you. Yeah. Don't put it on your face. And,
Right.
I put Poochie on my forehead because I love Poochie so much. Yeah.
Oh, God. Oh, that's not too funny. All right. What's next for your honorable mention?
All right. So my other honorable mention, so I did dip again into the Star Wars world, and I did dip into the world of toys I wish I'd had.
Mm-hmm.
And so the good guys in Star Wars had 4 different starfighters, like different models of starfighter. The famous X-wing fighter, they had the Y-wing fighter, they had the B-wing fighter. I had all 3 of those. I did not have the 4th and final one, which was the A-wing fighter, and it was always a big kind of gap in the collection. And I remember being a kid, being like, I don't have the A-wing fighter. It's not fair. I don't have one. So just being really bitter about that. But I didn't have one, and I think. It only came out really briefly. There was a brief window where it was out, then it was gone. And so I just never had one. And what was really ridiculous is that I had the pilot. There was a special pilot for the A-Wing. G.I. Joe did a nice job of, if you are selling the vehicle, the driver or the pilot comes with the vehicle. Kenner, who made Star Wars, were just greedy, and they did not include the pilot with the vehicle. You had to buy the pilot separately. Of
course.
And we fell for it. We fell for it, back then. So if you bought an A-Wing, the pilot would not have come with it. You'd have had to have the pilot. So I had the pilot, but I didn't have the actual ship for him. And so he would just run around and punch bad guys in the face on the ground because he didn't have his own. He didn't have his own ship to actually fly. Yeah. It's in the shop, so I got to just go out and do this with my fists,
Right.
I just gotta go out and shoot him, with a gun. So no A-wing fighter. Big gap. There's an A-wing shaped hole in my heart, and it has never been filled. So if I could have one now, I have no idea what I would do with it, but it would be pretty cool to kind of, maybe I'd be like, okay, I can die now. I had the A-wing fighter. Life goal checked off.
Yes. Well, maybe that's something you should consider getting tattooed on your arm.
Oh, there you go. Speaking of, that's a way to have it without taking up room in the house, right? Yeah. Ask Julie what she thinks of that after we're done talking.
Yeah.
What would you think, honey, if I got the A-wing fighter? First of all, she'd be like, what are you talking about? Yeah, what's that?
And I should get somebody to draw like a Poochie on my back and come home and be like, guess what?
Yeah, look what I did. I never told you this, but I love Poochies.
You know how we need to replace all the tires on the car? Well, guess what? I did instead with that money. I'm making tattoo jokes. I actually have 3 tattoo jokes, but all right, I have 3 tattoos, but I like to make tattoo jokes. So
tattoo jokes are fun.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll be like, okay, replace the tires is gonna have to wait a little while because I spent that money on, the tattoo. Yeah.
It was worth it.
The tires will be fine,
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
Exactly. Look at the detail on her hair. Yeah. Her multicolored hair.
Yeah.
Oh God. All right. So my last one, this is kind of like a go with me here, if you will. And this is like kind of pushing it. But my whole childhood, and again, I would totally hang out in there as an adult, is I really, really wanted a tree house. Like a clubhouse, tree house. A couple of the neighborhood kids had one, which I was like super jealous of, and we like tried to make one with me and my friends, and it was like a hobo lived in there. It was not something you could stay dry in or not get like covered in filth, or worms.
Yeah.
But again, when you're 10, you think you can construct a house and build a go-kart and all that stuff. So, so I, begged my parents, to build like a cool clubhouse or something. And that didn't happen. And we didn't have a tree in the backyard to use for that anyways. So I tried really hard to kind of make my own adaptation of a treehouse or clubhouse, and they were all really bad, and not constructed well. So that was unfortunate. But yeah, just always wanted one. And my kids are definitely very imaginative, playful. So if they could have a playhouse, they totally would. Which they've got a ton of stuff to play with. But I always dreamt of like having a treehouse and having like sleepovers in it, like the Monster Squad and
Yeah.
or
Yep.
the
They had a
Sandlot,
cool
these
treehouse.
yeah, they always got to hang out in a treehouse and it's like, why can't that be me?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I hear you. That was a dream of every kid, right? Like we'd
yeah.
build stuff out of pillows and blankets, and
Yes.
tents in the backyard and all
Yeah.
that stuff to have your own little hideaway you could go and hang out with your friends or your siblings in.
Yeah.
One of my favorite book series from when I was like late elementary school, probably fourth and fifth grade, was The Three Investigators, and I may have talked about them on one of these
Yeah, I
podcasts
was gonna say that sounds
before.
familiar. Yeah. Of
They had a secret headquarters. The main character,
course they
well,
did.
there were three kids who had their own detective agency. They're all like sixth graders, fifth graders, maybe. But the one kid, his uncle, had his own junkyard. They actually ran a junkyard, and buried back in the junkyard was an old like camping trailer under a bunch of stuff. They discovered it was there. They turned that into their own headquarters. I always thought that was the coolest thing,
Yes.
that they had their own place that the adults didn't know about. And yeah, it was pretty sweet.
Yes. Oh God, I would have been thinking the same
Oh,
thing. Yeah.
total wish fulfillment, reading that,
Yeah.
so they knew what they were doing for sure. But
Yeah.
yeah, something like that, a treehouse. And yeah, we never lived anywhere long enough, like for even that to even be a consideration. We moved around so much, like we're going to build a treehouse in the tree in the backyard. Never,
Right.
never even a consideration. No time for that,
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. A
cool.
good childhood friend of mine, he was one of six kids, and they had somebody must like a construction company or whatever must have come and built this thing because they had this like amazing clubhouse that was like just for them, and it was 2 floors.
What? Holy
Yeah.
moly! I don't even have
Yeah.
2 floors in my house.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It had 2 floors and like nice furniture in there and windows and like a real door, like a real like yeah,
My word.
unbelievable. Yeah. It's
Spoiled,
like
completely spoiled.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like you get this amazing clubhouse and I got this like
Yeah. Nothing.
hobo tent over here.
Yeah.
Come
At
on.
the hobo tent, right? There's leaves inside of it, and
Right.
yeah,
Yes,
squirrels.
exactly. Rotted wood that cannot withstand like 2 seconds of rain. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's like pouring rain. I'm going to stay out here. Okay. No,
Right.
I'm not, because I'm getting soaked. I'm going to go inside and pout. Yeah.
Yes, I'm pretty sure that something along those lines happened. As a matter of fact, yeah.
Oh, wow. Though.
So,
Imagine having the 2 floor thing. Like you would just never leave if you were a kid. You would never leave. Your parents would
yeah,
be like, come inside. You're like, no, why would I? I have my
yeah.
own
There's
house.
like a ladder to get up there too. It's like, oh my God.
That's
And a
so
carpet,
cool,
which at the
though.
time was nice. It was like, oh my God, it's like nice and like,
What?
soft to walk on. Meanwhile, like, carpet. I'm not a fan of carpet, but back then I was like, oh my God, it's even
Yeah.
carpeted. It's got wall-to-wall carpeting, both floors.
Yeah. Yeah, we do area rugs, but yeah,
Mm.
no wall-to-wall carpeting. In fact, I
No.
find houses with wall-to-wall carpeting to be very sus. They're extremely
Oh,
sus.
yeah. So, kind of died on that carpet over there.
The wall-to-wall
So,
carpeting I liked was my one grandma and grandpa's house, because they were immaculately clean. Both of
mm,
the, they were cleaning all the time, just bustling. And so like you'd go there and be like, I could just lie on this carpet and
yes.
roll around on it as a kid, and it was perfectly fine. You weren't skeeved out by it at all.
Oh no, same with my grandparents. You could eat off that carpet. I mean, that was like perfectly clean. Yeah.
It was that generation, they had more power to them,
Mm-hmm.
Now, the one thing I will say about them, they have carpeted bathrooms. Looking back on that, that was really gross. Like,
Yes.
carpeted bathroom, really?
Right.
But it was clean. I mean, it was clean,
Right.
but it's still really gross.
Yes, it is. I know. That's yeah.
A trend
Well,
that, should never have happened.
Yeah. That was a big mistake. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yes. Speaking of carpeted bathrooms, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been too long. I really appreciate you nerding out on nostalgia like we do. It's always fun.
Absolutely.
So thank you for coming back.
Always fun. There's fun in preparing for it. There's fun in actually talking about the stuff and, connecting, with someone who, cares as much about all these kinds of things as I do. So yeah, this was a trip. It was a lot of fun and quite a walk down memory lane. A lot of good memories as I was researching for this. So cool to unbury some of those things for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing we didn't get to talk about at the top of the show is if you just want to give us your quick, what do they call it? Like the elevator pitch of what you do and where people can find you.
Sure. So I am a children's book author, and I may have mentioned that earlier in this very episode, but I write books for middle school kids, so probably 4th grade up through probably 8th grade are the audience for my books. And I have actually 3 books that have been published and another one that's coming in February. I'm going to be starting to share that on social media very soon.
Oh, good. That's exciting.
My other 3 books, yeah, it is very exciting. And it's a different concept, different direction. My other books are called the Magic Pen Adventures. They're called Monster Problems, Super Problems, and Time Problems. Each one's about a different middle schooler that gets a hold of a magic pen. Everything they draw becomes real when they draw with the magic pen. And they get into shenanigans in each case. They're zany, fun, wacky adventures. My new book that's coming out is a little different. It's more of like a mystery adventure kind of thing. 3 kids go to a private boarding school, and they're all 3 of them are new there, and they get invited to a mysterious student organization that hasn't met in 5 years and actually closed down 5 years ago under mysterious circumstances. And they are told this club is actually not meeting, get out of here. And they're like, where do these invitations come from? Why were we invited to something that's not even actually meeting anymore? And so they dig into the mystery and they discover things beyond their imagining. Fantastic things. So that is coming. It's called the Pure Shore Club. Yeah, kind of a throwback to a lot of those great 80s kids adventure movies like Goonies, and you mentioned Monster Squad, Explorers, Flight of the Navigator, a lot of those where kids are finding another world kind of beyond the world that they think they know. So, and digging up things that are fantastic, kind of just slightly hidden out of view that they didn't know were there. So yeah, that is coming out February 20th and will be available on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com, and anywhere books are sold online, you'll be able to find it. And my website is www.jasonrlady.com. You can learn more about me there, and you can also learn more about my books and order them through there if you're so inclined.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for this
thank
walk
you
down memory lane. All right.
This was a lot of fun. Thanks.
I hope you have enjoyed this holiday episode of the Pop Culture Retrospective podcast. It's always so much fun having Jason on the show. It's so helpful to know that there are other sincere nostalgia nerds out there, and Jason is certainly one of them. I keep forgetting to share that I have a website for this podcast. You can visit www.popcultureretrospective.com. Not sure why I said www, because you all know to do that. But anyways, if you go to the website, you can find blog posts, guest profiles, merch, links to my social media accounts, and more. And before we wrap up, I wanted to share that I have been a guest on several episodes recently of the 80s and 90s Uncensored podcast. The hosts invited me to several roundtable discussions about pop culture events from the first 5 years of the new millennium, and each year got their very own episode. So far, 2000 to 2003 have been released, with 2004 and 2005 being on the way very soon. I will leave a link to this fantastic podcast hosted by 2 awesome guys, Jamie and Milo, in the show notes. If you like this show, which I would hope that you do since you're listening to it, if you like this show, you will definitely like theirs. And I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday season. And I've had this episode ready to release for a bit here, but I wanted to make sure to release it on December 22nd, which is my sister's birthday. She would have been 44 this year. So happy heavenly birthday to my sister. Remember, be kind, be safe, and hold on to your memories.
Thank you for tuning into my mama's podcast and the memories of Auntie Rebecca.